move on to our next speaker. Dave Chapman will talk to us about how asteroids are named. And there's going to be some commentary as well from Peter Jedicke. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's quite an honor for to be invited to address you. I recognize that Toronto is the heart of the RASC. That's where it was born, and the Toronto Centre is one of the bigger centers. So thank you very much for inviting me. So I'm going to give you a very brief presentation tonight. It's called "What's in a Name," and it's actually one of a series of presentations I plan to give. This is only the minor planet portion, and so I plan to give future talks on how comets are named and lunar features and so on. So so this is all about minor planets, and the people who are responsible for naming things in the sky are the International Astronomical Union. And they have delegates from all countries and other members, of mostly professional astronomers. If one way to think of them, they're like the United Nations of astronomers. If you think of it that way, they're sort of the global authoritative group that makes decisions. And they voted Pluto out of the Planet Club, and but they're also responsible for naming things. And so they name planets, dwarf planets, satellites of planets, and then there's a working group for small body nomenclature, WGSBN, and they look after they name the small solar system bodies, and they consist of minor planets, which used to be called asteroids. Minor planets is the preferred name now. And comets. Thankfully, they don't name meteoroids. And I'm only going to talk about minor planets today. Now, there's a diagram on the slide there that shows the first 10 discovered minor planets in relation to the moon. And actually, the first minor planet Ceres is now a dwarf planet. Ceres has the it has the distinction of being a planet, an asteroid, and now it's a dwarf planet. So it's been 3 different things through its lifetime. And by the way, if you wonder who I am, I should have said when I started that I'm from the Halifax Centre. The moderator asked me to do that, and I forgot. I'm from the Halifax Centre, and I'm a fellow of the RASC. And I'm involved in quite a few different projects. And if you want to find out all of those things, just go to my link tree and you can see all the things that I'm involved in. So the way I'm going to teach you about how these minor planets are named is to tell the story of one minor planet. Now, I searched really hard, and this is the best picture I could find of it. I'm sorry, it's not very clear. But that's what we have to deal with. That's the picture of the minor planet that we're going to talk about today. It was discovered on April 8th, 1989. I think it's 8, is it? April 8th? An observatory, April 3rd, at La Silla Observatory in Chile by Eric Walter Elst. You may not have ever heard of him, but he's a Belgian astronomer who actually just passed away a couple of months ago. But he's responsible for discovering 3,870 minor planets. He's the fourth most prolific of the individual observers. So I'm leaving out all of the observatories and robotic telescopes and stuff that discover minor planets. And so he has a minor planet named for him. Obviously, it's Elst. And this minor planet, it's a pretty ordinary asteroid. It's in the main belt. It's the radius of its orbit is 2.4 astronomical units. Its eccentricity is 0.1, which makes it close to being circular, but not exactly circular. It only gets as close as 2.1 astronomical units to the sun. So it stays well within the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. No concerns about it striking Earth or anything like that. Has a period of 3.6 years, and its orbit is inclined 7 degrees to the ecliptic. And its diameter is 5 kilometers. Now, I was looking at a map of Toronto, and 5 kilometers would cover Midtown Toronto, and it would almost cover Pearson Airport. Might be a bit small to cover the airport. In any case, if that asteroid hit anywhere near you, it would ruin your day. There's no question about that. But that's not going to happen because it's a well-behaved main belt asteroid. So let's move to the next slide and we'll talk about how we name these asteroids. So when a minor planet is discovered, it's given a provisional name, and there's a formula involved. You take the year of the discovery, and then there's 2 letters, and possibly a number after that. So the year is the year of discovery, and the first letter comes from the sequence A, B, C up to Y. I and Z are not used, so there's only 24 letters in that first letter. And so they're mapped into half months. So that first half of January would be A, the second half would be B, first half of February would be C, and so on. So the date of the discovery gives you that first letter. The second letter is assigned just in order. So in the, if it were AA, it would be the first one in the first half of January. And the letters for letter 2 are A, B, C up to Z. I is not used, but that gives you 25 letters. So the idea there is, you go once through the alphabet. That's 25, and then and if there's more than 25, you go through the alphabet again, but you put a number 2. And if there's more than 50, you go through the alphabet again, and you give it a number 3, and so on. So that's the formula for determining the provisional name when they first discover it. And so this asteroid that I mentioned to you that was discovered in 1989, I think G corresponds to April, yes, the early part of April. So it was given the provisional name 1989 JG2. So that kind of gives you an idea, when it was discovered during 1989. Now, when they first discover an asteroid, they don't really have a good handle on its orbit. And so what they do is they keep on studying it, and they usually watch it for 2 or 3 trips around the sun until they have a very good estimation of its orbit, so its future position can be predicted. And at that point, they give it a number, and I'll explain that on the next slide. So we're on slide 4. And what I'm going to tell you is how it gets a permanent serial number. This is quite easy because once they decide that it's going to have a permanent serial number, they just take the last one and add 1. So series was the first one, and so on, and they just keep adding, increasing by 1. So after the precise orbit is calculated, usually after several revolutions around the sun, they gave 1989 GJ2 the permanent serial number 10073. Now, you know that asteroids are sometimes named after people or places or things. And so we'll get to the fun part. How does a an asteroid get a proper name. Now, after following the discovery of the asteroid, the person who discovered it has 10 years to propose a name. Now, you can't name it after yourself. That's not allowed. And there's a whole bunch of rules, which I won't go into, about what you can't name asteroids for. But I'm not going to bother you with that. If the discoverer doesn't name it, then it's kind of open season, and people are invited to propose citations for asteroids. They don't get to choose which asteroid, but they write the citations, why the person, place, or thing should be honored by having an asteroid named, and they pass it to the working group, and the working group deliberates, and then about once a month, I think, maybe a little more often, they publish a bulletin where they publish the names of the asteroids that have been named. And so this particular asteroid, 10073, was named on November 8th, in 2021, not very long ago, in Volume 1, Number 11. Now there's the drum roll, and we have to go to page 5. Let me know when page 5 is up. Okay, so here's the big reveal. Asteroid 100. There's a misprint in my slide. I look at the one at the bottom. Asteroid 10073 was named Peter Hiscox in not in October 15th. Boy, there's a lot of mistakes in this. It was back in November, as I said. So 10073, 1989, JG2 was named Peter Hiscox, and that name was suggested by the Toronto Centre. And I understand that sadly he's passed away since that was done, so he did not get to enjoy that pleasure of learning that. So let's move on to slide 6. And I'm sorry about the mistakes on that slide, but I had this all arranged for somebody from the Halifax Centre, and when I edited it, I guess I was too hasty. Let me know when slide 6 is up. So slide 6, so this may not be of interest too much to the Toronto Centre. I was trying to make this Toronto-centric, or maybe Ontario-centric, but I realized that there were just too damn many asteroids named after Toronto people or Ontario people. So I'm just going to talk about my original presentation here at Halifax Centre was about an asteroid that was named here, and I wanted to let people know about all of the asteroids with Nova Scotia's connections. I won't stay on this too long. So in terms of living persons, there's David Levy, Roy Bishop, and myself. I got mine in October last year. Notice the number 10047. James Edgar. Now he's not in Nova Scotia, but he's a member of our centre, so he's in there. David Lane, Mary Lou Whitehorn, Dave Turner, and Dan Magus. So the names in yellow are current residents. That first list of, I don't know how many it is, are living persons. And then there's a bunch of historical figures. So Newcomia is for Simon Newcomb, who was born in Nova Scotia. And then Beals is for Carlisle Beals. Cabot is for John Cabot, the adventurer. Bill Boyle, I missed this one, and Peter had to remind me. That's after Willard Boyle, who I don't think he was born in Nova Scotia, but he lived here. He's the guy that co-invented the CCD camera, and I met him, and he got the Nobel Prize for that a few years ago, and so he has an asteroid named for him. And then that one, Slocum, is Joshua Slocum. He's the first person who sailed around the world single-handedly. And then there's a couple of places. There's Acadia University, St. Mary's University, and the town of Annapolis Royal. So those are the asteroids with Nova Scotia connections. Now, if somebody wants to do a project, maybe they could go through the list of Canadian asteroids and find like maybe the names of the asteroids with Toronto connections or Ontario connections. I imagine it's a pretty long list. So I'd like to finish up with slide 7 with some more little trivia about asteroid names. Let me know when it's up. 7 is up. So, did you know the first few hundred asteroids were named for female characters in Greek mythology, and then they ran out of those. I think the first male one was Eros. So the study of asteroid names is quite fascinating. You could spend hours and hours learning about asteroid names. There's some whimsical ones, I would say whimsical, but there's an asteroid named after the Beatles, and there's asteroids named for the individual members of the Beatles. But there are other less whimsical ones. Malala, who is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Rosa Parks, the famous black lady who refused to give up, who refused to sit at the back of the bus. Michelangelo, well-known artist and sculptor. And one of my favorites, 9007, James Bond, who is a fictional character. And 13681, Monty Python. Now, this is where I want to bring in Peter to talk. Peter Jedicke was the guy, the mastermind behind this recent series of RASC asteroids. There were 24 RASC centers were approached. Well, they were all approached, but 24 RASC centers sponsored names that were accepted and published in bulletins between September last year and February of this year. And they filled in all of the unnamed asteroids in the range 10045 to 10109. So if you go to the list of asteroid numbers, you will go through there and you'll find the 24 names that were proposed by RASC centers. And I'm going to single out one. Well, one of those was David Chapman, me, and another one was Peter Jedicke. I'm going to single out 10097 because the Prince George Center didn't nominate a person, but they wanted to memorialize the members of the Humboldt Bronco hockey team that many of whom perished in and other people perished in a terrible bus crash. So I thought that was kind of neat. So Peter Jedicke, 5899, was the mastermind, and I think Peter's there. And Peter, would you like to say a few words about that?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thank you for welcoming me, and thank you, Dave, for including me in your wonderful little informative presentation here about the asteroid names. I'm Peter Jedicke, and I'm in London, Ontario. I'm a member of the London Centre, and I'm also a fellow of the RASC. I share that with Dave Chapman. And so Dave's described how these asteroids get their names. And while Dave was talking, I was able to flip over to Wikipedia, and I'll just remind Dave that, in fact, Willard Boyle was born in Nova Scotia, according to Wikipedia anyway.
Oh, well, thank you for that correction.
And you know, and I do apologize too. I'll take at least some of the blame for you forgetting to update a couple of those numbers in your slides, because you did ask me to look at those a few days ago. So partly my fault.
No, it's okay. I didn't recognize Bill Boyle because I don't know him as Bill. Right. He's Willard Boyle. That's how I know him, Dr. Willard Boyle. So Bill Boyle just escaped me totally.
Well, actually, that's not a bad point to bring up, because you mentioned that there's quite a convoluted sequence of rules about what you can and can't do with an asteroid name, and they do encourage folks who write nominations for asteroid names to be as concise as possible. They've got a maximum. I think the maximum is 14 letters. No numbers or funny characters are allowed. It's not like passwords. And I'm pretty sure 14 is the max. So there are actually quite a few asteroids that have 14 letter names. And Willard Boyle certainly wouldn't have been, out of the question. But whoever it was who made that suggestion must have thought it would be more concise to name it Bill Boyle, or maybe they knew Willard. Maybe he really did go by Bill. Did he? I don't know. I don't know either.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, and one other point that you mentioned that I thought I would just give a little more light on is the idea of browsing through the asteroid names. I get a kick out of that, and this is the Bible for that. Hope folks can see the title of this book. It's called The Dictionary of Minor Planet Names. And this was, there's a fellow in Germany named Lutz Schmadl, who obviously is even better connected to all this than Dave and I are. This is a really huge book. It's very thick. There's something like, it's got 1,300 pages. And in fact, this was published in 2000 and I think I'm going to say 2006. And so any of the asteroid names since then are not even in here. So this is kind of fun. I often spend, a rainy evening kind of browsing through this and trying to make connections. As Dave has hinted, and as most of you will surely be aware, a lot of asteroids are named for famous folks, either dead or alive, folks who've contributed to exploration, to science, to literature, to art, culture, all kinds of things. So that's a little more to fill in what Dave was asking about. And I came on partly because I thought I would help answer any questions about asteroid names that anyone might have. But I also just thought I would give a little bit more detail on what we did there in this current round of naming proposals. As Dave mentioned, 24 names have been accepted by the IAU's committee that were proposed by centers across the RASC. And this occurred to me in 2018. So it feels like forever ago. It's 4 years ago already. And in fact, as you might have noticed, Dave highlighted the Humboldt Broncos. That bus crash took place in April of 2018. And so when I reached out to the centers and Prince George Center replied, and I discussed it with them, this was fresh on everyone's minds. And in fact, I don't mind just saying, even though I don't even think I knew where Humboldt, Saskatchewan even was before that terrible accident, I put my hockey sticks out next to my front door for a week after that dreadful crash, just because it was something that I thought reached out to all Canadians. We're all hockey fans, and a tragedy like that. So I think it's wonderful that an asteroid name can be used to provide a connection, a memorial along those lines. And I think that maybe the folks in the professional side of the International Astronomical Union, maybe they underappreciate how much fun the folks who are not professionals can have with something like asteroid names, both in terms of outreach to the public and also in terms of among ourselves. We are serious amateur astronomers. We know a thing or two about what's up in the sky. And, we've heard Tim this evening talk about all the different adventures he's had with his equipment. We take these things fairly seriously. And it's a nice little bit of, one word I might use is whimsy when we talk about asteroid names. I really appreciate that. So having the idea to propose names from across the RASC, I thought would be a good way to kind of get this ball rolling. Dave mentioned that the numbers are in sequence now. Well, once after the orbit's been calculated, asteroids get a sequential number. And even though this current batch of asteroids was chosen from numbers that started with 100, the actual numbered asteroids are now well up over 500,000, and weighs something like 95% of those asteroids don't have names. So I think it's important for us to establish an evolving tradition that folks who take astronomy seriously and are really keen about it are the ones who get preferred for those asteroid names. I've got nothing against having asteroids named John, Paul, George, and Ringo. That's part of the whimsy of it, sure. But I would be a lot more impressed if I heard that, Paul McCartney was going to do a song about his asteroid because he was so pleased to be immortalized in the heavens. I like the idea that we use this as a connection for astronomy. And so that's what happened with the 24 names that I submitted the proposals late in 2018, but the back channels went on and on and on. What Dave mentioned about the working group for a small body nomenclature producing a bulletin. You might have noticed when Dave referred to those bulletins that the bulletin number 1 was in 2021, was last year, basically less than a year ago now. And, you know, asteroids have been named for 200 years. So what's been going on? Well, for all of those 200 and basically 21 years up to now, the names of asteroids were announced along with a lot of other observing information, a lot of other technical details in a publication called the Minor Planet Circulars. And the Minor Planet Circulars sometimes run up into hundreds of pages, 600-700 pages, long lists of observatory assignments, reports of asteroid recoveries that had been lost or something similar, temporary calculations of orbits based on shorter observational periods. All kinds of things were in these Minor Planet Circulars, and they're still published. But it was decided that since there was this huge backlog of unnamed numbered asteroids, that they would break that off so that the naming of the asteroid, the announcement of the names of the asteroids, wouldn't be held back if for any reason there were delays in the Minor Planet Circulars. And in the last few years, that had actually happened quite a few times. There were computer glitches. There was just plain old bogged down due to large volumes of observations and so on. There was a lot of reasons over the last, let's say, 5 years when the Minor Planet Circulars were delayed. And that obviously the IAU took that seriously and basically has taken a huge step forward in solving the problem by having this more or less monthly bulletin produced just by the group that worries about the small body nomenclature, and mainly that means the asteroid names, the names for the numbered asteroids. So that's where we stand right now, and you know, here we are. I also want to mention, since I think I heard Eric Briggs' name mentioned here, I hope that means Eric's in the audience along with all of the rest of you online. Eric and I have been working on maintaining the database of Canadian connected asteroid names on the RASC's Society website, and Eric's done a huge amount of work. I want to acknowledge that work and give my personal thanks to Eric for keeping me on the straight and narrow a lot of times. So with that, I will conclude my remarks. Dave might want to jump back in and push me on something. I'm available for any of you to ask questions for a little while here yet, and thanks very much.
Well, I think we might have exceeded our time allotment, which I never actually communicated to you, but I will just say a couple of remarks. One is that in the recent issue of the Journal of the RASC, the President's Corner has a full listing of the recent, the recent RASC asteroids. So if you want to go there, they're all there, all 24 of them. The other thing is, it makes great party conversation. You know, I go into a party. I was down on vacation in Cuba, and like people were saying, "Hey, you seem to know a lot about the sky. So, like, are you an astronomer or something?" And I said, "Well, I'm an amateur astronomer, you know." But I said, "Here's a cool fact." I said, "I have an asteroid named after me," and they're like, "Oh, no way! That couldn't be." And I said, "Well, no, you can look it up online. You can Google it." And I said, "And it's even in Sky Safari." About a month after the asteroid 10047 was always in Sky Safari, but about a month after it was named after me, they updated their list, and so I can actually look at my name in Sky Safari, which I think is super cool. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you, Peter, for helping me.
You're welcome, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you, Dave and Peter. That's all very interesting, and I really appreciate you shedding light on how asteroids are named, and of course the Canadian connection, and the fact that you're behind it, essentially. So thanks again. And Dave, you mentioned that this is one presentation in the series, so I'd like to have you back in the future. Tell us how the other heavenly objects are named.
Well, I was thinking about that. If you found that interesting enough, I mean, I could definitely do comets, which isn't that much different from asteroids, but there are some pretty interesting aspects, like you can discover a comet and have it named after yourself. So there's lots to be said about the naming of comets.
Right. Good.
I
Let's
want
go.
in on that too when you discuss that.
Okay. Very good.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
We've got room for everybody. Let's go to Emma. Let's find out if there are any questions.
Yeah, so we actually didn't get any questions tonight for this one.
Wow.
Okay, well, in that case, I do have a question myself. Are you working on a new submission with new suggested names?
The short answer is yes.
Very
Yes
good.
and yes.
And I guess you don't want to say any more.
No.
Yeah, I have to admit,
can't.
and you know, it's a worthwhile thing to ask me,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that. I don't want to sound cagey, but I also don't like getting folks expectations up too high. The committee works in strange ways. Things go on behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. I'm sure folks can appreciate that there's that sort of thing involved with anything like this. So I prefer to only share it once it's done, kind of thing. That way nobody can get disappointed.
Absolutely. So from the time you make a submission to the time you hear back, how much time elapses?
Well, that's where what I was saying towards the end there. In the days when the minor planet circulars had to carry all of this information, you could wait literally years for something to go through. I am hopeful. I don't know anyone else who has made submissions in the last, let's say, year or so. But when I look at the lists that come out in these monthly bulletins, I'm reading between the lines. I actually think they've managed to shorten the process considerably, and I think that's a really good thing. So, I guess I'm going to answer the question this way. I think we are now down to the level where you might expect an answer within a year.
Sounds about right, about reasonable.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so thanks again, gentlemen. Really appreciate your presentation.